I've known Dr. Ferdinand for just over a quarter of a century. Yeah, it's been so long, Dr. Ferdinand. I heard that. It's like so long. My first encounter with Dr. Ferdinand was when I did the class Philosophy of Service. I saw the name, but I had no real interaction with the person until then. And although I worked before I came to school, my whole philosophy of service became a reality. It was not service to me or service to you per se, but a service to God, firstly. And then it was service to man. Now, whenever I missed the mark, note that God was not the first person I was serving. I remember those days clearly. He was the Vice President for Academic Administration at that time, and as you heard, the passion was there to teach. So, he taught. Talking about his passion, as Mrs. Francis Victor said, that passion was exhibited through loud, thunderous tones at one time, and then tears at another time. But the passion you would feel when he would become passionate, you would leave feeling that way as well. Whether you shared the concern or not, there was just something gripping about it. The tears of joy would leave you solemn enough to know that whenever it would bring him to that state, of course, it was something heavy on his heart. And he prayed fervently for these things. His favorite quote would be what? The greatest what?
Want of the world.
Yes, the greatest want. And I realize when I review course outlines, I'm seeing more and more that quote is being used by our Christian educators. And I'm saying it's not just his quote anymore, it's our quote. It has become who we are at the moment. Through his lectures, he would say to the class, if I say it twice, take note, because you're going to see it again. And he was a man who wouldn't waste words. Because if he said it, and you didn't listen, crap will smoke your pipe. So I was a good listener. I listened well, and I followed. As an administrator, my encounter continued with when I worked in the Admissions and Records Office. I didn't have lots of moments to share like everyone else, but the moments that were shared with Dr. Ferdinand has always been meaningful. It's been fair and it's been honest. There was always a reason for doing what you do. According to the word Mr. Seeley used, what's it again, Mr. Seeley? Griot. I need to put a plug in here because as chair of the department, it would be remiss of me to say all that information cannot just stay in his head. It cannot just stay in his head. Somehow we need to find a way to extract it, put it on black and white, and have it printed, including the stories. Coming to the storytelling. I don't think I've ever had a class where there wasn't some story involved. I did both philosophy of service and philosophy for education with him. And every session was linked to the content to be delivered for the day. And I used to sit and wonder, you have to be so old to get so many stories to fit into this. But then I realized it's not because of age, but because of experiences. So Dr. Ferdinand, as you will not be around as often as you used to be. I trust that you would go enjoying what you do best, sharing Christ with everyone you meet by the example you have lived and by the lives you have touched. May God bless you. To Mrs. Ferdinand, it would be remiss of me to come here and not say anything. I mean, Mrs. Ferdinand, I've never sat in a class with Mrs. Ferdinand, but I've sat in meetings with Mrs. Ferdinand. And besides all that has been said, I want to add one thing. I have listened to her, and as I said, I'm a good listener. And I must take note that Mrs. Ferdinand does not open her mouth until she has thought about what she wanted to say. And when she is speaking, it's like that. Because people listen. It's meaningful thought being expressed in words. So I thank you, Mrs. Ferdinand, for being such an outstanding woman with Dr. Ferdinand. And to you, God bless you both.